priest, a Methodist minister, and a rabbi were all at a funeral together. There was an open casket, so they each looked in to pay their final respects as they walked by. They were used to giving death the respect it is due, as over the years they had each buried many members of their congregations. And then after the funeral, they decided to take a walk together. And as they walked, they talked about their own deaths. The priest said he hoped that at his mass, people would say what a kind man he had been and what a good shepherd he had been to his flock. The Methodist minister said he hoped that people would remember his leadership during the tough times and his generosity of spirit. The rabbi reflected for a moment before speaking and then said, I hope they say, look, she's moving. We like to hang on, and not just to life. We like to hang on to the past and onto our ideas and ideals for the future. We sometimes hang on to our children or the idea of who we think our children should be and become, no matter how old they are. We get attached to our belongings and our possessions, and many of us get attached to our status and our titles. Why wouldn't we? We're taught to hang on, to hold on, to control and compete, to want to win, to be better than. And so, we're taught to anticipate and predict and direct. I'm guilty. I have clothes in my closet that haven't fit me in years, but I hold on to them hoping someday. We hang on sometimes for dear life, even though at times what we're holding on to threatens our very lives. Have you ever played tug of war? Yeah. Do you remember how if you hold on too tight, even when you know the other team is already winning, as the rope moves away from you, it can give you a really bad, painful rope burn? It seems like we do the same things in our lives. Sometimes we stay too long in a relationship or a job that isn't life-giving anymore and may even be harming us. Seems the more we think we have to lose or to gain, the harder we hold on, even when we're hurting ourselves or each other. Which made me wonder what would happen if we loosened our grip just a bit. The Buddha taught there is and will always be suffering because everything changes all the time. We age, get sick, suffer, and die, as do our loved ones. But he also taught we can learn how not to add more suffering into our lives. And he taught that we do it by being present, which has never made a lot of sense to me. But I heard Insight meditation teacher Tara Brach tell this Buddhist teaching story recently. She also told the funny story I started with, and it's helping me remember and even understand what it means to be present to our lives. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a king and a queen and their son, the prince. He was a good son, skillful in the ways of war, clever in the ways of the state, but he was somewhat self-centered and often distracted when he wasn't busy being kind of moody. So the king and queen were concerned for their kingdom, and they decided to talk to an older monk, a woman wise in her ways. The monk asked the parents, "What is your son passionate about?" They thought it was hard to come up with anything, and then finally they said horses. And so the monk said, "Good, bring your son, the prince, back to the palace gardens tomorrow morning, and I will meet you there." And they did, and the monk had with her a beautiful black horse. And the prince asked, "How much for the horse?" And the monk said, "Hold on, first you have to ride it." And so the prince mounted the back of the horse and rode off, and he was ecstatic. He galloped off. In a few minutes, they couldn't see him anymore, and he galloped over fields and through valleys and across rivers and up and down mountains. And he ended up deep in the woods, far, far away from the palace and the village, in a part of the world he didn't know very well at all. It was getting late and it was getting dark, and he realized he had ridden so far there was no way he could make his way back home that night. And so he started looking for a place to stop, and he saw a little cabin, and he knocked on the door, and the woodcutter who lived there and his wife invited him in, and they fed him dinner and they made him a bed. They also had a beautiful daughter, of course. But still, the next day, he went out and he asked everyone he met how to get back to the kingdom where he had come from. But no one had the foggiest idea how to help him. And he did this day after day, trying to find his way back, trying this trail and that road, but none of the roads brought him back to where he had been before. And so he stayed. He stayed in the cabin with the woodcutter and his wife, and he fell in love with the daughter, and he married her, and they had 2 children, and he learned the trade, and he began to work with the woodcutter on this edge of the forest. And gradually memories of his old life faded. He grew happy and content. He loved this reality, this wife, and his new family. And sometimes he would go for long walks, often to a clearing in the forest where there was a pond. And one day while he was sitting in the sun on the edge of the clearing, he heard a noise that startled him, and he looked across the clearing and he saw his 2 children, his own 2 children, being chased by a bear. And he got up and he started to run towards them, and he saw that his wife also was running alongside the edge of the woods, watching the bear chase his children, trying to figure out how to stop the bear from killing her children. And he ran to them, but he was too far away. And he watched with horror as his children, and then the bear, and then his wife, and then even the big black horse all fell into the pond and disappeared under the surface of the water. And he fell to the ground, weeping and sobbing, holding his head, unbelieving. Which is when he felt his mother's hand on his shoulder. And he looked up to see his mother's face. His father was standing too, not too far away. They were all back in the palace garden. The guards and the monk with the horse were all there. And the queen looked down at him and said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're awake. The minute you touched the horse, you fell to the ground and fell as if into a trance, as if you were dead. You were gone for maybe 2 to 3 minutes." And the prince yelled, "What? Impossible! 2 to 3 minutes? I've lived a whole life. I had a wife and 2 children, a trade, a community, work, family." He was so angry. He stood up and he walked away. Which is when the monk bowed to the queen, took the horse, and left. And very soon, within a few days, because this monk was very, very wise and very, very powerful, the prince, having learned to loosen his grip on all his expectations and fears about what his life as a prince was supposed to be, softened and opened up to what his life actually was. Although he still perceived the imperfections of his parents and the problems the kingdom faced, although he was more aware even of his own weaknesses and the fact that he could and might fail as a ruler, he was no longer overwhelmed by the situation or overly ambitious about fixing things. Instead, he grew very appreciative and attentive, from then on caring deeply for his parents and for the kingdom and for himself. The end. Losing everything loosened the prince's grip on life and opened up his heart. We know from our own lives that sometimes, if not often, it goes the other way. Losing things, our physical strength, our mental capacity, our beauty, our power, our health, our job, our marriage, our self-respect, our identity can close us down. We may feel so angry or so ashamed, so resentful or so not good enough, so hopeless and so hurt that we decide to hide who we are from the world or criticize the world constantly for disappointing us. Classical Christianity calms our anxiety about this painful and unpredictable world by promising us a future, a static future in heaven. And contemporary progressive politics calms our anxiety about this same painful and unpredictable world by constantly putting pressure on people and politicians, on ourselves. But only in a place where nothing is happening at all could there be no change, no suffering, no loss, no injustice, no dying, no death. Here on earth, where everything comes to an end, the most painful and the most pleasurable things, the most meaningful and the most maddening movements, the most daring and the most dangerous leaders, we need to be able to find our balance here and now, even when the ground is shifting beneath our feet. So 2 women in our congregation who gave me permission to share their stories reminded me recently of how to hold our ground even when it feels like the world may be falling apart. One of the women has an aggressive form of cancer. As she fights to hold on to life, she is at the very same time preparing herself to let go. There are so many ways she's doing this. One is by getting her ducks in a row, getting her papers in order, and discussing her final wishes with her friends and family. She's even found herself awake at night, inspired to go through her closets and give away her clothes, moved to look through her bookshelves and give away her books. At first, when I heard this and received myself a box of books, I worried it was a sign that death might be nearer than we had thought or hoped. But then we realized together that she was gracefully being present to what is. She was loosening her grip, but not giving up. She was making space. She was preparing herself for something new, whether she has 20 or 2 more years to live. And then she told me about how much time she was spending in the garden watching caterpillars turn into butterflies. She talked about how difficult it was sometimes to actually get up and leave the garden because the drama, the play of caterpillars crawling up onto the plants, spinning their cocoons and secluding themselves, allowing themselves to be transformed and then returning to life as winged, graceful, beautiful creatures was so mesmerizing, miraculous, and mysterious. And then in the very same week, another member who lost a son to suicide a few years ago told me that she too was having a hard time pulling herself away from the garden and the daily transformations she was witnessing as butterfly turned into caterpillar. Even to do the things she loves so much, it was hard to leave the garden because she was so inspired by what was so real, by reality played out in her backyard. And then I realized that both women remind me of the prince. They are allowing the reality of death to wake them up rather than put them to sleep. They know how badly the rope burns when we hold on too tightly, so they are living with a more relaxed grip. A more relaxed grip than my own, for sure. A recovering perfectionist, persistent idealist with tendencies towards becoming a utopian, I can very quickly get lost in thoughts about what could be and should be. I am a reformer by nature, and so I can miss the joy, power, and potential of the present moment easily. E.B. White once wrote, "I arise in the morning torn between a desire to improve the world and a desire to enjoy the world. This makes it hard to plan the day." And boy, can I relate. And Leo Tolstoy, the great Russian writer, must have understood this daily dilemma because he told the following story. Our last story. One day, it occurred to the Tsar that if he knew the answer to 3 questions, his life would surely be a success. So he made a public declaration that whoever could answer the following questions would receive a great reward. 1, what is the best time to do each thing? 2, who are the most important people to work with? And 3, what is the most important thing to do at all times? Not surprisingly, many people came to the palace with answers for the Tsar. Some answers were religious in nature. Others were scientific. A few were political in orientation, others more practical, and some focused on love, while others focused on financial gain. The Tsar was not satisfied with any of the answers, and so he went off by himself into the hills to see a hermit he had heard of. When he got there, the hermit was working in the garden. The Tsar told the hermit why he was there. The hermit listened and smiled and continued digging. Watching didn't feel right, so the Tsar offered a hand, took the shovel from the old man, and started digging in the garden himself. When he took a break, it was hot outside that day, he reminded the hermit of the 3 questions and the reason he was there. And so the hermit offered to take back the shovel, but the Tsar objected and just continued digging for the time being. And as the sun began to set, the Tsar felt like he was running out of time, so he brought up the 3 questions again, really wanting his life and his work to be meaningful and successful, and realizing he had to leave soon. So he repeated his questions. 1, what is the best time to do each thing? And 2, who are the most important people to work with? And 3, what is the most important thing to do at all times? If you can't help me, just tell me, he said, and I'll go away. But just then the Tsar and the hermit saw a man running towards them out of the woods. And as the man got closer, they could see that he was clutching his side, which is just when he fell to the ground unconscious. They ran to him, and the Tsar, seeing that there was blood on his body, used his own shirt, which he stripped off of him, to make a bandage for the man who had fallen. And then the hermit and the Tsar carried the man back to the cottage, where the Tsar cleaned the wound with water that he had to go and fetch from a nearby stream. Long after the sun had set, the man opened his eyes and asked for something to drink. The Tsar, happy that the man was alive, fell asleep exhausted after this long and difficult day. In the morning, it took both the Tsar and the injured man a few moments to remember where they were. And when they were both more fully awake, the injured man whispered, "Please forgive me." "Why do I need to forgive you?" the Tsar asked in return, a little bit confused. "Because I came here today planning to take revenge on you for my brother's death. My brother died in one of your wars, you see. When I heard you were coming to see the hermit, I planned to find you and stop you on your way and kill you. But instead of finding you, your attendants found me and did this. If I hadn't stumbled upon you here later, I would surely be dead. I intended to kill you, but instead you saved my life. I'm ashamed and grateful beyond words." The Tsar was surprised and then relieved and then happy to see how easily an enemy had been made into a friend. And so he not only forgave the man, but he helped him by having him brought home with a physician and servants so that the man could heal completely. And when all this was done, the Tsar walked back to the hermit's cottage to ask his 3 questions one last time before giving up. He found the hermit working in his garden again and was about to ask again when the hermit stood up and said, "Your questions have already been answered." "What do you mean?" the Tsar asked. "Well, if you'd not helped me, and stopped in the garden, that man, your sworn enemy, would have attacked and killed you on your way home. Maybe killed you on your way home. And you would have regretted not staying with me. So the most important time was when you were digging in the garden, and the most important person was me, and the most important pursuit was helping me dig. Then when you were caring for the wounded man, the most important time was then. He was the most important person, and your attention of him was your most important pursuit. Or else you would never have reconciled with him and made a friend of an enemy. The hermit finished and turned back to his work in the garden. The only important time is now, he said. The most important person is the one you are with, and the most important thing for you to do is the one you are currently doing. The end. It sounds so simple. It is so simple. Be present with the people and task you are doing, and you will stop adding suffering to the world, and you may even find new creative solutions to current problems. If only it were easy. Simple doesn't always mean easy. It's not the way we're wired. Physically, psychologically, and neurologically, we are made to worry about, anticipate, and plan for the future. It's part of our evolution, and our survival has depended on it. We are programmed to analyze and strategize, to predict and problem solve, to correct and control. We love to fix things and set them straight. We love to win. We like to keep a good grip on ourselves, each other, and our lives and this world. But while we're doing all that, the rope is always slipping out through our hands. Our lives and the world are always changing. So we might at least want to try to not add more suffering to the mix. So I invite you this week to see if you can loosen your grip a little bit and be more fully present than you've been before, perhaps. And if you're willing, let's do an experiment together right now. Let's see how it feels. Take both your hands in front of you and make both your hands into a fist and squeeze them as hard as you can. And keep breathing. And still squeezing as hard as you can. See if you can relax the muscles in your face just a bit, and now in your shoulders, but keep squeezing hard. And now back off just a bit, just a tiny bit. Loosen your grip just a little bit. And notice your breath and your face and your body. Now loosen your grip a little bit more. Close your eyes if you want and notice how it feels. We get to choose how tightly we hold on. You can let go completely now. We get to choose how tightly we hold on. As you experiment with your grip this week, observe what happens when you let go even just a little bit of the way you think you should be, of the way you think other things should be, and of the way you think other people should be. Take some time to notice and enjoy what is. Like the prince and the czar, you might discover it's more than good enough, and that you are too. Amen.
Visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
LOVEBB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256 or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed
and be a blessing.